What's in your wallet? This now ubiquitous tagline of Capital One's long-running ad campaign promoting its credit card products has been spoken by numerous celebrities, from Jennifer Garner to Samuel L. Jackson. The award-winning campaign helped propel the banking startup's success. Capital One is currently the 6th largest bank in the U.S., with a net worth of over $2 billion for the first quarter of 2022. The question, what's in your wallet, captured the zeitgeist of our American capitalist imagination. Apparently, we Americans are deeply concerned about what's in our wallets. Halfway through Luke's gospel, Jesus has set his face for Jerusalem as he continues his homeless wanderings throughout Palestine, attracting large crowds with his teachings. Someone in today's gospel-seeking crowd asked Jesus to arbitrate his inheritance with his brother. They too are concerned about what's in their wallet. Jesus responds, "Friend, who sent me to be the judge over you two?" He then addresses the deeper concern embedded in this individual's demand, stating, "Be on guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." The Nazarene then offers an illustration of this point with a parable of a wealthy man whose land produced an abundant crop. Speaking from a first-person perspective, Jesus describes this wealthy landowner talking to himself. The landowner begins, "What should I do? I have no place to store my crops. I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to myself, self, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry." At this moment in our rich man's self-absorbed monologue, God interjects God's self, saying, "You fool, death's knocking on your door tonight, and you can't take it with you." For sure, this wealthy landowner has worked hard. He has taken on risk cultivating the land, or rather financial risk in hiring workers to cultivate it for him. On the surface, it would seem wise to store up this yield. However, this man's harvest is so great, he has to tear down his existing barn, a fine one for all we know, to build a bigger one with the intent of keeping it all for himself at the expense of his neighbor. In his self-aggrandizing, repetitive use of I, me, and my, it seems obvious that he has placed himself at the center of his story. He's forgotten the creator of this land that yielded its abundance, land of which he is merely a custodian along with his neighbor. He has forgotten from whom his abundance is derived. He is self-centered, not God-centered. Often it's interpreted that abundance in and of itself is problematic, and I'm sure we could debate that. Or that Jesus is frowning upon eating, drinking, and making merry. For certain, Jesus the Nazarene, who was accused of being a drunkard, associating with tax collectors and dining with all who would welcome them into his home, their homes, he is not opposed to celebrating the God-given goodness of life. Abundance is a gift from God. However, in his monologue of I, this landowner has centered himself and his wealth to the point of idolatry, worshiping himself and his wealth over and against God and neighbor. He displays a hoarding devotion to what's in his wallet, or rather his barn, that God and neighbor aren't even in his purview. He's suffering from what Frederick Danker suggests is Koros hubrisate. One who is unusually blessed can become a victim of arrogance or hubris, and deluded by a false sense of security, catapult to certain death. Perhaps the reason Americans have been so enamored by Capital One's tagline, "What's in your wallet?" is because it spoke to our own Horos Hubris-ite, an idolatrous concern about what's in our wallets, the almighty dollar, and the false sense of security that it can provide. God does desire for us joyful abundance. But I wonder if our relationship with the American capitalist system has become idolatrous, centering Americans in a self-aggrandizing narrative of rugged individualism over and against relationship with God and neighbor. The Wall Street Journal reports that the richest Americans got even richer during the pandemic. Americans saved $2.7 trillion extra from January 2020 through December 2021. Most importantly, the top 10% of earners held more than half of that money. Furthermore, recent data suggests that those earning an adjusted gross income of over $10 million annually share approximately 9.3% of that income charitably. And this is a mere 1.1% more than their peers who earn only $50,000 a year or less. In other words, in the face of extraordinary wealth, Americans choose to build bigger barns to store it for themselves. From a global perspective, we all stand convicted, whether we are top 10% earners or not. According to the World Bank, the gross national income per capita places the United States in the top 10 of high-income nations, alongside many well-known tax havens for the rich. In 2020, Americans' GNI was $65,900 annually, compared to the majority of its global neighbors, who earn only $13,205 a year, or far less. In other words, we're not only the wealthy landowner who builds the barn to hold all of his grain and goods. America is one of the top 10 biggest barns in the world. Having set his face for Jerusalem, Jesus' divine mandate is set to the cross, where the full scope of God's justice and judgment will be revealed. For divine love came in human form to bear the full weight of our iniquity, to reveal that human crookedness or moral failure to resist idolatry. Through the cross, divine love is set to transform the hearts and minds of humankind with mercy and grace so that all might be resurrected and inspired to a new life that is rich towards God. This is the healing prescriptive Jesus offers for our Horos Hubris-ite diagnosis. For to be rich towards God is to live a God-centered life that is turned outward from self. To be rich towards God means to treasure grace and mercy for God and neighbor. To be rich towards God is to work alongside one another as mutual custodians of God's creation. To be rich towards God is to share the gifts of creation's abundance in joyful eating, drinking, and making merry together. To be rich towards God is to advocate for God's justice in the face of unjust economic systems with and for one another. To be rich towards God is to lay down our lives for one another as Jesus Christ, God incarnate, elected to do so for us. To be rich towards God is to treasure what God treasures. And our God treasures all God's children and desires for them shared abundance for all. Our treasure is found in the personhood of our neighbor, local and global. Therefore, to be rich towards God is, as Gail Ramshaw suggests, countercultural, not the same as the treasure we value in our society. And these ideas cannot sit easily alongside the goals of capitalism. Following the divine physician's orders, we then realize that that materialistic question, what's in your wallet, is immaterial, for our treasure will not be found there. Human life does not consist in the abundance of one's possessions, for God has claimed God's children as God's treasure through Christ's resurrecting love and merciful grace. Death, whose time is uncertain, comes knocking on all our doors. Whatever is or is not in your wallet, it cannot protect you from death's inevitability. We cannot take it with us. Only the way of the cross triumphs over death's sting. Therefore, to be rich towards God is to be generous with whatever abundance God has provided in the here and now, with and for loving our neighbor, as God has so loved us. For it is there, as our young children showed us earlier in the children's sermon, we will find our treasure, as God has so treasured us.